Local programming on KRWG made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Fronteras at Changing America. I'm Anthony Moreno. Today on the program we discuss economic development in New Mexico. We will talk accomplishments here in the borderland, discuss opportunities, and learn about challenges facing the state today. And what better person to have to talk about economic development than the Cabinet Secretary of the New Mexico Economic Development Department, Jon Barela. Mr. Secretary, thanks for joining us.
Anthony, great to be here. It's good to be back home, back in my hometown, back in KRWG studios.
That's right, you were a former employee of KRWG?
Back when I was in high school, went to Las Cruces High School and had the great opportunity my junior and senior year to work at KRWG FM, 90.7 on your FM dial, and of course here at KRWG TV as well. So it's a great opportunity to be back. It feels like coming home.
Well, welcome home. I'd like to start off talking about economic development, and real quick, what are some of the questions that potential companies, employers ask you when discussing relocating to New Mexico?
Well, one of the first questions that they always ask is the bottom line. We are working hard to make New Mexico more competitive. The governor, through bipartisan leadership and support from the legislature, was able to reduce the business tax rate in New Mexico by nearly 24%. We also reduced and basically eliminated the business tax for companies that manufacture products. We've been so successful that Ernst & Young a few months ago ranked New Mexico the best place when it comes to business tax rates in the West, the most competitive state in the West when it comes to business tax rates for manufacturing. And that in turn has led to a great amount of interest from companies not only in New Mexico currently to expand, but also from companies around the world looking at New Mexico now, which to locate and relocate their business.
You know, it's funny you mentioned the world. We have the opportunity here in New Mexico to be right on the border, and I'd like to talk a little bit about what is happening in Santa Teresa and the opportunities that exist there. The Union Pacific rail project, huge project. Mm-hmm. Is it a game changer?
Absolutely a game changer, and really in a phrase, we envision Santa Teresa to be the inland port of choice for the Americas, and that's our long-term vision for that area. We also see some very impressive short-term opportunities. And the fact of the matter is, in the last 3 years, close to 3,000 jobs have been created along the border area here in Doña Ana County, Las Cruces, and the border region. We see tremendous growth opportunities here in this area, especially. And it's no surprise that in the last 3 years, our trade with Mexico has nearly doubled to almost $1 billion, which is fantastic news for New Mexico's economy, but especially here in southern New Mexico.
And you mentioned those jobs. What type of jobs are we talking about?
We're seeing a wide array of jobs being created, of course, in the transportation sector with Union Pacific locating in Santa Teresa. But we also see companies coming from a panoply of sectors. We see manufacturers moving in now. We see, of course, warehousing and logistics operations. We're seeing some R&D companies showing interest in Doña Ana County as well. And we're going to see value-added food production do very well here in this area. We just recently had an announcement a couple days ago with a national value-added food producer, almost 200 jobs here in Las Cruces, all related to international trade and warehousing, distribution, transportation, all of those sectors.
These are fairly good-paying jobs. Mm-hmm. Those are some things, the manufacturing jobs have been really at a loss here in the state for so long. What's really happening to bring them back?
Great question, Anthony. When you talk about manufacturing, there's a lot of people who wring their hands and say, the best days of U.S. manufacturing are behind us. And what I would say is that would be a false presumption. I believe the reshoring of jobs to the United States and to the border area, including Mexico, is something we need to position our state very aggressively to take advantage of. And the fact of the matter is, you're dead right on, Anthony. These jobs not only provide great wages, they provide excellent benefits, and they're economic-based jobs, which has a multiplier effect in other sectors. So we will very often see as much as a 3-to-1 indirect job creation effort from those manufacturing jobs that come to the state, and that's why we have been so focused on that sector.
Now, you know, there's a lot of talk about a binational community there in Santa Teresa and with the border of Mexico and the community in San Jeronimo. Could you tell us a little bit about that and how that's developing?
Well, the binational community is a very, very exciting and innovative development. As far as we know, it's the first of its kind master planned binational effort to work in a binational and a bi-state way with our counterparts in Mexico. I have monthly meetings with my counterpart, Secretary of the Economy of Chihuahua, Manuel Rusek. Governor Martinez and Governor Duarte speak often, and Governor Duarte being the governor of the state of Chihuahua. And ultimately what we're envisioning is a 50,000 or so acre master plan community that aligns the roads, the utility corridors, residential and commercial developments, and of course the rail line, which Mexico is working on right now to bypass into Santa Teresa, which will create enormous opportunities not only for New Mexico but our neighbors in Chihuahua. And that's the key point, Anthony, when we talk about border development, is that we have to view Mexico as an ally in job creation and in economic development. Indeed, they've been great allies and great folks to work with. Because in the end, of course, New Mexico competes with Texas and we compete with California and Arizona for jobs. But the bigger and more global view of economic development in the short and long term is the fact that we in New Mexico, our country competes with Asia, we compete with India, we compete with other countries around the world. And we have to take this regional approach that between the assets that exist in the border area on both sides, Mexico and the U.S., can trump and can be as competitive as anywhere else in the world. And that will ultimately lead to the jobs in the long term, but is being proven in the short term by the jobs that are being created here and in Mexico, because there is that symbiotic relationship that we have with Mexico and Chihuahua.
Now, how is the UP facility? I mean, that seems to generate a lot of attention. The people at Union Pacific that I've spoken to almost talk about it like a field of dreams approach. Like if you build it, they will come. You know, the factories, the businesses, they will come. Has the phone been starting to ring a little bit more since that's been open?
You bet. It's created a center of gravity and a great buzz within the first few months of Governor Martinez taking office. We had great bipartisan leadership, certainly of the local delegation here. I want to also thank, you talk about bipartisanship, thank Senator Mary Kay Papin and Representative Mary Helen Garcia, because they have been stalwart advocates for developing this area along Santa Teresa and the border, and it was their help that really has led to a lot of the success. Can't do it alone. Governor and I recognize that. We appreciate their efforts. But Union Pacific is indeed an anchor tenant in the Santa Teresa area. That has created that center of gravity, which now cannot be denied, and has led to a number of inquiries from companies looking to locate there in Santa Teresa. And the $500 million or so almost investment that they made, $400 million to be exact, and the hundreds of jobs, 600 to be exact, that are being created permanently, really create that anchor tenant effect, and a lot of other companies now are moving in to take advantage of that transportation hub that exists.
I'd like to talk a little bit about the challenges that are facing that community. I mean, there's a lot of things happening. It's growing very quickly. What are the biggest challenges in that area right now?
Well, fortunately, we were able to address the first critical issue, and that was water distribution and water availability. The first couple of years of our administration, we focused heavily on water. The water situation, we can now say, will take us probably for another decade or so of projected growth. So that was job one that we had to address. When we took office, believe it or not, in the industrial park, Anthony, there was not enough water pressure for fire suppression at times, and that was obviously something we needed to address in order to accommodate the industrial growth and that was ultimately going to take place and is taking place now. The second phase of this now is to work on transportation. We have made great strides and great progress with improvement and construction of Strauss Road that leads from the UP facility to the Pete Domenici Highway. But there are some major projects that we are now studying and undertaking to make sure that the road infrastructure keeps pace with the industrial and now residential growth that's taking place there in that region.
Now there's many trucks that are using that road every day. I mean, and it's obviously going through some wear and tear. It needs to be addressed. How long do you think it's going to be before we actually have the right road systems in place there?
The good news, Anthony, is that we do have an infrastructure in place with the Pete Domenici Highway, Strauss Road, that will get us through the next year or so, maybe a couple of years. We really need to focus now on Airport Road, which is another key arterial that takes trucks from the airport and the UP facility to the industrial park and then ultimately to the Pete Domenici Highway. So that really is one we're going to focus in on. Industrial Road is another one that we have to look at improving. And then ultimately in the out years we need to look at perhaps building and planning for a parallel border highway that takes traffic directly from the Santa Teresa port of entry to Sunland Park. That would be basically a twin road that Mexico has already built on their side of the border. And those are the projects that I think we need to be looking at in the short and midterm.
You mentioned Mexico's side of the border. Are there some things that with Mexico's side of the border that are working to be addressed as well in that area so that there can be more of an I should say easier flow between the companies in that region?
Precisely why we have this binational planning process and this binational community. It was addressed by both governors. We have a very, very unique geographic advantage in Santa Teresa and San Jeronimo, which is the border community just south of Santa Teresa. We are the easternmost part of the border along the 2,000 mile or so U.S.-Mexico border. We happen to be right in the middle. And Anthony, as you know, it's much, much easier, much less expensive to build infrastructure over land than it is over a river. Bridges are incredibly expensive, incredibly cumbersome to plan, and ultimately very difficult to expand. What we have here is a clean slate. This is a unique opportunity because all of the other major border crossings from Brownsville to San Diego, Tijuana, all are congested, have not been master planned, and the choke points create enormous delays and waits to cross both people and commerce, of course. Here at Santa Teresa, we can now master plan this in a way that accommodates commerce freely and an exchange of goods and services and people in a very expeditious manner, and do it in an environmentally sensitive way. That's the exciting thing that we have started to plan.
Now, how is the planning down there made, and is it made for the future as far as a more sustainable way, as far as being upgraded for business in the 21st century? How's that going?
Absolutely. That's the exciting part of this as well, is that we are underway right now with meetings. We have meetings every 2 weeks with working committees that have been appointed by my counterpart and by myself that focus on infrastructure, transportation, and then sustainable environmental practices, including the key part of how we can use this binational community to save our resources, especially water. And so we've started that binational communication in those critical areas. And we are not only planning for the short term, because there are 1,000 new residences being built in Santa Teresa, or that have been built in the last 18 months or so. And San Jeronimo is now starting to see their first residences being built. So now's the time when we have to start using building codes and other types of practices to conserve water and to conserve our resources and to make it a binational community, yes, but also a binational sustainable community, which, as you well know, is very often a challenge along the border.
Now, you mentioned the airport earlier. Airport Road, and also the airport obviously is a key part of development down there. I was able to speak with Vice President at Foxconn about a year ago, and he had mentioned something about developing the airport so that it can be competitive with other areas like Dallas-Fort Worth and things like that. So where are we now? I mean, I know Doña County Airport has worked on some upgrades. Is it where it needs to be, or where does it need to go to really be able to compete with these other communities?
Perceptive question, because that's really the third part of this. I mean, we now have surface transportation that I think will take us down the road. Certainly, we've got improvements to make, as we've discussed. We clearly have rail in place. The other part of it, of course, is getting that rail bypass to our border in New Mexico from Mexico. But you're exactly right. The planning process is beginning now. Discussions are beginning to be had regarding how we improve the Santa Teresa Airport. Ultimately, like I said, this should be the inland port of choice for the Americas. If we're going to accomplish that goal, we have to make sure that air cargo service is in the mix, as well as maybe some passenger service down the road. And that is something that we are now beginning to consider. And we do need to look at improvements to the runway, the terminals, perhaps building some more hangars, obviously involving the state and local officials. But clearly we would love to see some private investment in those endeavors as well. We're beginning to have those conversations. But that's a very, very key point that you've just made, and something we are pursuing.
How is the interest so far in that, as far as private investment goes? I mean, are companies really interested in this, or is it more of you guys really having to kind of nudge them a little bit?
No, you bet. There's been some good private sector investment, certainly by Union Pacific, who've been a great corporate partner. They've helped defray the cost of much of the infrastructure in that area. And we have had some preliminary discussions with others that are looking at the airport as a potential center for air cargo service. Nothing in stone certainly yet, but we would continue to invite the private sector to look at that airport and are having discussions about how we can make sure that there is a private sector investment done there.
Another question about infrastructure. I was able to attend a public regulation commission meeting here in Las Cruces last year, where CEOs of companies in Santa Teresa were there voicing concerns about energy, about power outages, and about certain glitches happening to where it would cause them to shut down production, lose thousands of dollars. People get sent home, don't get paid for the day. What are you doing to work on this issue, and how is that going? Is it still an issue?
Well, things are much improved. It's still not perfect. We still have power outages, and our office and the governor and I have had communications with El Paso Electric, the PRC, Commissioner Hall in particular, who represents this area. And obviously the businesses, we've heard from them along the area, along the border, members of the Border Industrial Association and Jerry Pacheco, and we've had multiple meetings. So things have improved. We still know that there can be some further improvement, but compared to where it was 3 years ago, it's vastly improved. We have to understand that not only utility rates, but utility reliability and electrical reliability is a key ingredient in having a company locate to a particular jurisdiction. Not only does the electric rates have to be competitive, they have, especially in manufacturing, they have to be reliable. A millisecond glitch of power can mean the loss of literally millions or hundreds of thousands of dollars at least of lost product. So that's a critical thing, and we will continue to focus on improving that. And I'm happy to report that things have improved since we've taken office. As
the community down there grows, so are the people who work there obviously may want to live closer to work in the area. How is it going to be for people who are working at these factories? Is there going to be more affordable housing for them to live in the community nearby there?
I think so, absolutely. We are seeing some really very, very nice, affordable housing projects going up very close to the industrial park. As I mentioned before, we have 1,000 homes either that have been built, being built, or are being planned as we speak. 1,000 new residences that will be in place here in the next year or so. That has been an enormous, I think it should be perceived as enormously good news for the people of New Mexico. These are property taxpayers or people paying income taxes, and they're employing the construction trades. So that is very, very exciting news. It's also leading to, of course, commercial development. You create the jobs, you will see residential development. You see residential development, you will see commercial and retail opportunities. And we've seen the first diner, the first hotel go up in Santa Teresa, and while it may be considered a baby step, to me it's a big leap forward in terms of where things are going. So we're excited about that. I also at this point want to congratulate the City of Las Cruces, Doña Ana County regional planners. The other thing about this is that there has been the last 2 days, as we are recording this show, the establishment of a regional bus system, which will be taking people regionally from as far away as Alamogordo and TRC to Las Cruces, and of course a bus line that will run from Chaparral to Santa Teresa. And all points in between. And that also is very, very important for making sure that New Mexicans are employed and that we are able to get these people to work in a very efficient manner. And so congratulations to the local planners, certainly our Department of Transportation. I know will be involved down the road, and certainly our department will do what it can to further promote this bus line. I think it's a very exciting development.
Yeah, that's obviously, after speaking with many people in that area, they mentioned transportation as being an issue, people having trouble getting a ride to work, getting to work on time. So that's good news. Another issue that was discussed with me with some of the business owners down there was that they're having trouble keeping employees. An employee that could last 90 days, employee that could do the work, but also an employee that can pass a drug test. And a lot of soft skills seem to be missing from some of the people that they're hiring. I was wondering what your department is doing to really address that issue so that there can be a workforce with the needed soft skills here in the area.
Well, the unfortunate reality is that this is not only an issue in Santa Teresa, it's an issue nationwide. We have, I know that employers around the country are having challenges with hiring employees with the appropriate soft skill. And it's certainly not something that's a problem that's unique to Santa Teresa. The governor and certainly I are aware of that. One of the successes that we have here is the early college high school program, which was pioneered here with NMSU and the Las Cruces Public School System. Tremendous program that not only teaches kids the soft skills for employers, but also the other academic skills that get them ready to enter employment immediately should they choose, or to go on and get their 4-year degree at a college or university. That's one approach that we have been taking. The other approach was the governor appointed a group called the Employability Partnership Group. And that is a group primarily consisting of business people from around the state who give constant input to the Department of Workforce Solutions, my department, and other departments in state government, basically telling us what sort of soft skills are needed and how we can use our public education department and our higher education institutions to teach those soft skills and to teach also, of course, the academic skills for employers, so that we can develop this talent pool for those that choose to expand or relocate in New Mexico. So these are just two things that we are working on amongst others, but these are showing some good and immediate results. Last thing I want to say, though, about soft skills and having of course, had great parents. Ultimately, the soft skills begin at home. The government can do what it can do, but things like showing up to work, making sure you're not getting on drugs and alcohol, to a certain degree also has to be driven by families and in discussions around the dinner table about how one should conduct him or herself, not only in school but ultimately as an employee. And very often we fail to talk about that, but it's something that I think is very, very important to discuss as we look at the longer term solutions.
You know, recently I met you at an opening of announcement of a manufacturing company coming to Las Cruces. Mm-hmm. What were some of the things that were really done to bring that manufacturer here?
Well, as they said in the announcement, 160 jobs, average pay of $37,000 plus benefits. What they said was the tax environment got them to look at New Mexico first. The second thing that got them interested was our workforce development initiatives, including our job training incentive program, on-the-job training program that's been very successful, that teaches the hard skills. And then finally, the open environment, that was the welcoming environment that they received from not only the city, but of course the state. And those were the reasons that they stated and at the announcement for choosing Las Cruces. They could have gone anywhere in the country, just about, and we were honored they chose Las Cruces in New Mexico for their operations. And of course, it's a California company that's expanding out of California, and as you heard, Anthony, the good news is they were so happy with their initial foray into New Mexico that they're now looking already at potentially expanding again. So that's always you certainly can't promise anything, but the fact that they have had a good early experience is, I think, indicative of where our state is going, and certainly indicative of the wonderful leadership here in Doña Ana County and the city of Las Cruces, who were great partners in this.
Okay, and unfortunately, time flies. We're out of time. We're excited to learn more about that tortilla factory that's getting ready to open here in Las Cruces. But I want to thank you for joining us, and thank you for your time, and look forward to speaking with you again in the future.
Thanks, Anthony. It's great to be back, and thank you for everything you do. And congratulations to KRWG, 50 years. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Our guest was Jon Barela. He is Cabinet Secretary of the Economic Development Department of the state of New Mexico. I'm Anthony Moreno. Thank you for joining us. This is Fronteras, a Changing America.